Today we are as fortunate as to have a discussion with Kim Yeres, Senior Organizer from SA United Employers and Director of CHI Consulting. Together with Kim, we've got Dawie Brink from Course, BBBEE and Skills Development Solutions. And our topic for today is to talk about BBBEE, Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment. Welcome, Kim and Dawie.
Thank you.
Kim, I'm going to hand over to you, as I know that there's quite a few questions that we would like to ask Dawie coming from the side of business. So let's go there.
Thank you. Thanks, Elise. Dawie. So just a few things that have come across from a few of the employers with concerns with regards to the BBBEE and the COVID-19. Is there a BBBEE holiday?
Now, unfortunately, there's no B holiday. B goes on as per normal, and if there's social distancing or concerns about contracting the virus, SANAS has allowed companies to be verified online or virtually, and that has been extended to the end of December. So unfortunately, no B holidays in this period.
In terms of employment equity and the CETA reporting, how does that influence an employer's scorecard?
Kim, that is crucial. Without submitting your employment equity report, your EEA2 and your EEA4 to the Department of Labour, and the window period is from October until mid-January, that was not submitted, unfortunately you will get 0 points for management control. Same applies for skills development. If you did not submit your WSP and ATR, and that would be your workplace skills plan and your annual training report, that is due normally at the end of April each year. In this period of COVID and the lockdown, it was extended for quite a time. But if it was missed, the deadline was missed, then unfortunately you will get 0 points for skills development. And especially on the skills development, it is important because it's a priority element. So without scoring at least 45% or 40% of the target, you'll drop one level. So the reality is, if you were aiming for level 4 or better, you'll most likely be on level 8.
Okay. Is it legally binding to have a B certificate?
No, it's not legally binding. It is an indirect obligation. In other words, if you want to buy from me, I require your B certificate. Or if you want to do business with the state, then you need to have a B certificate. But it's not legally binding, no.
If an employer's turnover and their profit has dropped, is there any correlation, or is there any impact on them?
Yeah, especially in this time where most companies suffered losses, reduction in turnover. So it might be that an entity was operating on a generic level, meaning that the annual turnover was 50 million or more per annum. Some of our clients have has really taken a knock, and they are operating on a QSE level now. So that's the first area of notice companies need to take, is that the QSE scorecard is measured a little bit different than the generic in terms of the targets. So it's actually a bit more easier. So that's the first point of departure. The second point is that if your profits drop. Now, if you're in a loss situation, then we need to go back 5 years in terms of your net profit after tax. And a new audit principle just came through saying that your highest percentage in the last 5 years, meaning that your net profit after tax is a percentage of your turnover, the highest percentage in the last 5 years would be your percentage being used for this verification. In other words, let's say, for example, the highest in the last 5 years was 3%. We'll use 3% of your current turnover. That will become your new net profit after tax, and then your targets are based on that amount.
What if an employer decides not to get verified this year?
Well, there's some considerations to take into account. The first one is communication. You need to communicate with your clients, saying that due to whatever the circumstances might be, you've decided not to renew your certificate. It's important for your clients to understand that your previous certificate, the certificate that expired, if that certificate is valid for 1 day in your client's measurement period, they can still use that. So the most important thing is just to communicate with your suppliers, saying, for whatever reason, we decided not to renew this year, saying that our previous certificate that expired, if it's valid for 1 day in your measurement period, you're allowed to use it. So your client won't be penalized then. So that's the most important, just communication.
That's good to know. During the whole COVID period, and there were lots of sort of leniencies offered out to the employers to assist, one of them being an SDL payment holiday. What happens to the employer's skills development targets?
Well, your target is actually based on payroll. So even though you didn't pay any SDL, we use the payroll amount. So the total payroll is your target, is based on the percentage. On your generic scorecard, it's 6%, broken down into two sections, 3.5% for overall spend and 2.5% for bursaries. Those percentages are based on the payroll. So you would have a target under skills development regardless.
If the payroll and the staff have reduced significantly as a result or during this period of COVID?
So that will have an impact on two elements. First of all, management control. So your targets on each of junior, middle, and senior management will be impacted on that, as well as on disabled, total disabled staff within an organization. So that's the first area of impact. The second one would be skills development. So obviously your target is based on your payroll, so reduction in staff, there will be an impact on the target that will be reduced. Also, the headcount target under the skills development element will be reduced as well. The absorption, that's the 5 bonus points, the last section on the skills development scorecard, that is based on 5% of total headcount. Obviously, that will be impacted as well.
Are there any cost-effective empowerment initiatives that an employer can consider?
Definitely. Under skills development, there's tax incentives available on learnerships. Learnerships, SARS will give you 80,000 Rand tax incentive, which means that for every learnership, whether it's black or white students or learners on that learnerships, they will offer you 80,000 Rand, so 40,000 Rand initially, and the balance on completion of the learnership. So that 80,000, the monetary value is 28% of it, 80,000. Also on disabled learners, you can deduct 120,000 Rand from your net profit before tax. So definitely tax incentives is the way to go and explore that. Also your CETA funding, with your discretionary grants, a lot of the CETAs are funding learnerships. You need to plan for that, so you need to report that in your WSB and ATR, and you need to apply for that with the CETA. If the CETA decides to fund you, then you can claim that funding. Even though the CETA is paying for that, you can still claim it for your BE scorecard. And also on the salary side, 6% is a huge amount on any company's payroll. So, and that's the biggest expense on the BE scorecard. And a concern. One of our clients, for example, had a target of 18 million Rand. They had to achieve a level 2. If they don't achieve a level 2, they would lose their contract with their client. If they don't spend the 18 million, they won't achieve their level 2. And one of the ways we can get to that 18 million was with the salary portion of the employees. For example, if your employee earns a salary of 10,000 Rand a month, and you place them on a learnership, and a learnership, say, is 50,000 Rand, 10,000 times 12 is 120,000 plus the 50,000 cost of the learnership. So you can claim 170,000, but you only spend 50,000. So companies need to utilize all these initiatives for them to save at the end of the day. Also, under management control, there's a section disabled employees. Under skills development, if you engage a disabled learnership, that learner, if that learner is unemployed prior to the learnership, that learner for that 12-month duration will be deemed the employee of that entity. And so they can claim that this disabled portion under management control for the skills development initiative. Also, under enterprise and supply development, your target for supply development is 2% of your net profit after tax, and enterprise development is 1%. Companies need to look for non-monetary contributions. Knowledge is power, and the knowledge transfer doesn't always have to be writing out a check, right? So it could be a non-monetary contributions, spending time with the company, recording that. One of the things we'll see later on is that if it's not recorded, it did not happen. Companies need to record that, and you can put a value to that. Equipment, if some of the equipment that the measured entity is going to replace and might not see any value to that, there's definitely a value to that. So you can put a value to that, and you can donate that to an entity that might find that useful. So there's a lot of ways in structuring your BEE strategies and put a value to something without spending that money.
In terms of being audited, can an employee be audited during any random consecutive 12 months?
SANA sent out a notification in August this year, restricting entities to use only their CAPC official financial year. So if you missed your financial year end, unfortunately you have to wait a year then before you can do anything about your measured entity. So it's crucial that companies plan ahead, implement all their strategies within their financial year. Otherwise, you are stuck for another 12 months.
Are there any grace periods with regards to the new amendments or interpretations from the DTIC and the BEE Commission?
It depends. We've seen that the DTI or the DTIC these days has given some grace period for amendments. At other times, we saw that they would make an announcement, and that announcement is effective immediately. So it's difficult to handle. I think companies need to be very flexible in the planning, and keep that in mind. That it's not always to say that there is going to be a grace period. Sometimes it's allowed, and sometimes it's effective immediately.
So, in a situation where a supplier or a few of them decide not to renew their BEE certificates for this year, what impact does it have on myself as an employer?
Well, I think the key is communication. As I said earlier, that you just need to communicate with your client, saying, due to the circumstances of whatever the case might be, we're not going to renew our certificate, but our certificate will still be valid in your measurement period if it's valid for 1 day. Then you won't be penalized. So I think communication is key.
In terms of different ways to steer your BEE into the right direction, particularly when it comes to SED, have you got any pointers or advice?
Well, Kim, this is my personal opinion, is that socioeconomic development is a wonderful element, and it's very sad that little emphasis has been placed on socioeconomic development. Just quickly to explain, socioeconomic development, the whole idea there is to invest in a black individual that's unemployed. So the result is that individual has access to the economy. We are trying to invest not only in our black people to contribute to society, to the economy, But we also, given the background and in our rural communities, there's no family structures or little family structures. So the foundation is not laid. Education is not only teaching somebody to fish. In other words, giving somebody a skill or skills transfer. It's also instilling in them a worldview, how to apply that skill for the greater good. And I really believe that socioeconomic development is a tool to achieve that end. And I would encourage our clients and companies out there to really take this element seriously. Because what you invest in socioeconomic development now, the fruit of that you'll reap in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And that's what we're trying to achieve, is for everybody's benefit. We want individuals contributing to the economy, and socioeconomic development is a perfect tool to achieve that end.
Okay. How important is ownership on the BEE scorecard?
Well, there's a lot of emphasis, and ownership is a really, really controversial element. Some of the industries, like the mines, for example, only focus on black ownership primarily. Again, also with tender, with government and so forth. So ownership is crucial. Ownership is also a priority element. So without having at least 10% black ownership, depending on your sector code, you won't qualify, or you won't meet the sub-minimum target for ownership, and you'll drop one level. The reality is, without black ownership, the highest you can go is a level 8. So we'll aim for level 7, and because you don't meet the sub-minimum target for ownership, you'll drop to 8.
Are there any ways to empower and at the same time be cost conscious?
Absolutely. So the key word is a win-win situation. BEE should always be win-win. If it's not win-win, it's not sustainable. So first of all, we need to go and have a look at regarding cost-effective initiatives that we can implement, as we mentioned before, looking for non-monetary contributions, tapping into tax incentives, and so forth. And at the same time, we want to address the real issue, the real need, the real problem. And so we want to empower somebody to contribute, and companies can utilize that. Companies can say, listen, if our company can benefit from empowering somebody, then let's do that. And so definitely a win-win scenario is on the cards.
Do you believe that fronting is a way out?
Absolutely not. Fronting is being short-sighted. Fronting, there's no short way or short routes here. It needs to start from proper planning. Not trying to, and I think there's a difference between trying to reduce costs and trying to circumvent the codes, right? So, and it all boils down to intention. Now, obviously, business is there to make money, right? So, at the first point of departure, we need to acknowledge that and say, listen, yes, and we want to reduce that cost to give that company flexibility and to do business, to continue to do business. At the same time, this is a legislation that needs to be complied with, but at the same time, you want to do something good. You want to invest in an individual, even if it's only one, and you want to invest in that individual to such an extent that that individual can contribute to the greater society and the greater good.
Are there any risks with regards to BEE?
Definitely. Risk would be not knowing the legislation. Legislation changes, or how the legislation fits together. Obviously, it's a very complicated legislation. So I would suggest surrounding yourself with competent professional BEE people. Also, a risk for BEE would be not knowing the criteria of a tender, for example, or your customers or your clients. It might be that you and a competitor are equally graded in terms of your offerings and so forth, but there's a difference on your BE scorecard. It might be that your competitor can get that job because of that. So there's definitely a risk in there. Also, fronting is a major risk. Companies that's been found guilty of fronting can go to, or not companies, CEOs and responsible persons within companies can go to jail for 10 years. Or, it's actually 10% of your annual turnover as a fine. So it's quite serious, yeah.
So how does one manage these risks?
Well, I think, like, as I mentioned, you need to surround yourself with competent people that you trust, that has proven themselves through the years, that's up to date with new legislations. You need to be ethical. I think if you've got the right mindset and you want to contribute as a company to the greater good, then that needs to be fleshed out in your BE strategy as well. Also, not only be professionals, legal professionals, in terms of how your agreements are being set up. Ownership, for example, if those agreements are very weak, it might bite you at the end of the day, and you could be in a worse position as you were before you enter that transaction. So surrounding yourself with competent people and be teachable would reduce those risks, yeah.
I must thank you. It's been really, really informative having a Q&A session with yourself. I've definitely taken away some good information and insight. So thank you very much.